the mortality impact that we saw with social disconnection was comparable to smoking and obesity.
As Surgeon General under 2 presidents, Dr. Vivek Murthy made history by bringing mental health to the center of our national conversation, warning that loneliness is a public health crisis.
That there was this veil of shame that kept those experiences hidden and increased the suffering.
And to sound the alarm on social media's impact.
3.5 hours or more per day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. And it turns out the average amount of use per day among kids was...
Join hosts Martin Luther King III, Arndrea Waters King, Marc Kielburger, and Craig Kielburger as Dr. Murthy shares the urgent truth that could save lives.
So many of our listeners or viewers are terrified about our kids growing up in this world of unchecked social media.
In a world that is now more divided than ever, how can we...
What are you seeing in your own patients?
What's the prescription of solving disconnection?
Need a second opinion? He's brought along the doctor he trusts most, his wife, Dr. Alice Chen.
Why are so many of the people that I meet struggling with a sense of unhappiness and emptiness? Why do so many of them feel like something is missing in their lives? And I realized that
Welcome to My Legacy. Today's guest is Dr. Vivek Murthy. His mission isn't just policy, it's deeply personal. And as always on the show, he's not here alone. He's brought someone who sees a side of him that the world rarely does. Vivek, we'd love for you to introduce your plus one, your partner in purpose and in life, Dr. Alice Chen.
Well, thank you so much, Craig. And what an honor to be with you and Marc and with Arndrea and with Martin today. I'm really excited to introduce you both and to everyone who's listening to Alice, my wife. Alice is an incredible human being. We are about to celebrate our 10-year wedding anniversary. And she is so many things. Most importantly, she's a mom to our wonderful 2 kids who are 7 and 8. We actually met working together and building a national movement of doctors to advocate for better access to healthcare and more affordable healthcare for every American. So it was doing that work that brought us together. And we've been partners in every sense of the word since then. Every important speech I give, every project I work on that matters to me, like I always run it by Alice first to get a gut check on it. And we've worked together like that ever since the beginning. Alice is also a doctor by training. She's an internal medicine physician. She's very passionate about climate change. I will be clear that Alice is the reason that I compost and recycle. She's the one who inspired me to do that back in the day and keeps reminding me to do that even when the composting and recycling rules get really complicated. So,
how magnificent. And let me just say, a 7 and an 8-year-old, we can do a full podcast just on that. You all get medals just for that alone. And of course, we're going to get into the Surgeon General and the incredible work in medicine that you both are doing and have done particularly for our country. But before that, let's go back to the beginning. So, Vivek, I know that your father was also a doctor who also did house calls, going directly to his patients. And I'm really curious as how did that shape the type of doctor and the type of care that you provide? And what was the biggest lesson that you learned from him?
Well, he has been an inspiration, and my mother as well, in my desire to pursue medicine. My father did make house calls from the earliest days. And in fact, when my parents lived in Newfoundland many years ago, he would make house calls in weather that was incredibly cold, sometimes minus 70 degrees outside. And he would trudge to different homes, put on his snowshoe into their houses, and then see them to make sure folks were okay. So what he taught me early on, and what my mother also modeled as somebody who built and ran the medical practice that he worked in, they taught me something powerful about medicine that went beyond biology and prescriptions and diagnoses. They taught me that medicine was fundamentally about relationships. And it was through those relationships that you could help people heal. I would see people coming in to the clinic who were stressed and worried and feeling alone. And they would leave knowing that they had a partner in their healing. And so long before I was old enough to understand what was happening inside the body at a biological level, I could see that there was something powerful that was happening, this bond that was being built between my parents and the patients they cared for.
It's such a powerful idea, to your point, that so many are struggling alone. And one of the memories I treasure was when we were sitting with you, it was Martin and I, with you in the basement of a restaurant in DC. And you were working on your final prescription for America, your final letter. And I remember how, of course, people think that a Surgeon General is going to write about seatbelts or nicotine. It's all the images we have in our mind. And you were so open and so honest and so vulnerable, if I can phrase it that way, during your time as Surgeon General, where you talked about the importance of social connection and how alone people feel. And you very famously, of course, spoke about the connection, being alone was equivalent to smoking cigarettes, and just shaped the public dialogue. I asked you the question, why? And you were incredibly kind in being so open with Martin and I, talking about how personal it was for you, your own experiences that you had felt of loneliness. And I wonder if we could, and if I could, ask you to actually share it with our listeners and our viewers, because I think what you have done is shift the topic of social connection and loneliness into the public discord through your own lived experience and your platform, unlike anyone else.
For me, I realized the experiences I was having struggling with loneliness were actually not unique. A lot of people were having these experiences, but we weren't able to really talk about them, that there was this veil of shame that kept those experiences hidden and increased the suffering that many of us were experiencing. And that's what I had felt as a child when I was having a tough time making friends as a really shy, introverted kid, and where I worried about walking into the lunchroom every day and not having someone to sit next to. But that whole time, I not only felt ashamed about it and never mentioned it as a result of that to anyone else, but I also thought I was the only one dealing with that, and because everyone else looked like they were having a good time. And by the way, that distortion of reality that tells us we're the only ones struggling is even more heightened today. I think for young people who are, because of the experience of social media, where people are constantly posting their highlights, not their lowlights. And so the experience we have is that, oh my God, everyone is living this great life, and I'm the only one struggling. So that's how I felt even back then. But it sensitized me to the issue. But I saw a lot of it around me when I was a doctor. And I would have patients who would come in maybe for an infection or for complications of a medication they took, or because they had cancer or a heart attack or a clot. But often as I sat and talked to them, I'd realize that they were struggling with loneliness. And then I came to see that at scale when I was Surgeon General traveling across the country. So that was the reason I decided I wanted to do something about this. And to me, it was, in fact, a health issue. Because when you dug into the data as I did on loneliness and isolation, it became very clear that this was so much more than a bad feeling. And that people who actually experienced loneliness and isolation, they had higher risk of not only depression and anxiety and suicide, but also heart disease and dementia and premature death. And that's where the data point we shared that I think became quite striking for people was that the mortality impact that we saw with social disconnection was comparable to smoking and obesity. And we think about smoking and obesity as classic public health issues, but stories and statistics were telling us that social connection was just as important a public health issue for the country and really for the world.
Alice, as a primary care doctor and national health care advocate, what are you seeing in your own patients and the effect loneliness and disconnection is having on their health?
It's so multifaceted, the way loneliness impacts people's health. I see, I take care of people who are largely kind of working class, low income, and people are just struggling. They're trying to make sure, their kids go to school, that they're able to get from one job to the next job. I ask them, have you exercised? They're like, how? When? I don't have time to sleep or make a meal. When am I supposed to exercise? I see it in people who are struggling with whether it's obesity or depression. They're struggling with something that's sort of like part of their day-to-day life, and they don't feel like they have a partner, a community, somebody that will drag them out of the house and go on a walk with them every day. I always ask my patients, do you have do you have somebody that you can call upon? Do you have somebody, do you have people to lean on? A lot of times they say yes, but then when you dig a little bit deeper, have you talked about this issue that you're talking to me about, this anxiety about your job, about your diagnosis? Have you talked to people about that? They're like, no, I don't want to bother anybody. And so I think it's not only, it's both the structures around us where people are struggling so much that they just have to sort of put their heads down and go. And then it's also, there's a bit of sort of like ingrained, people feel like, oh, I shouldn't bother others. I should be able to deal with all my issues on my own. But on the flip side, I do have patients who are very connected to their community, where they do, they always come with a member of their family, where they have people, they're always around other people, and it just makes everything, they're just lighter. It feels like no matter what their diagnosis is, no matter why they're coming in, their arm hurts, their knee hurts, it's just a totally different flavor of the human experience when they have people.
We're building something real here, one episode at a time. If you want to be part of it, subscribe. It's free, it matters, and we're just getting started.
Alice, do you find that when you talk about some of your patients that are like, okay, no, I don't want to bother anyone, and do you find that that's more with your with women patients that, that is kind of shouldering everything, or do you find that with both male and female?
I think it's both. It's different between the men and the women. Mm-hmm. I think the men, there's more of a sort of macho, don't talk to people about my issues, don't show vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And with the women, it's more of a like, I just have to get it all done. Yeah. It's on my shoulders. I just have to get it done. So it's there for both, but a little bit different.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to work on that superwoman cape, right? As women all the time, like and receiving, and also being able to share more our sorrows and our joys together, and which brings me back to the idea of relationships. So. And I know, Vivek, that you said that relationships are the foundation of health and fulfillment. In a world that is now more divided than ever, how can we build relationships out in the world? What can we do to overcome so much of this division that we all are feeling right now?
Yeah, it's such a timely question. And I think there's a lot that's telling us in the world right now to define ourselves based on political differences or differences in how we feel on policy issues. But the reality is that obscures so much of what we do in fact share in common. Like we have common concerns as parents, as community members, as caregivers for aging parents, for people who are contending with a lot of common challenges, but a lot of those common challenges get obscured. So we found that one of the things that's important to do now is, one, to be able to create spaces where people can come together and talk about shared challenges, right? And because our kids are school age, and we think about the parent community in our school, Alice is the co-president of our Parents Association in school, and really helps create these opportunities for parents in the community to come together and talk about shared concerns. And that's very powerful because a lot of parents just feel like they're struggling alone. I think the other thing that we can do is to create experiences of shared joy. Mm-hmm. So there is so much that feels heavy in the world right now. But when we can experience joy together, whether that's coming together as we have so often in our school to see our kids all perform, for a holiday or just for an end of the year show, or whether it's coming together for music. We recently had the pleasure of taking our kids and my sister and brother-in-law to a music concert. Mm-hmm. And we all experienced that together. And it was one of those things where we were initially hesitant. Oh, it's late, it's going to be far away, like the kids are going to fall asleep. Is it really worth it? But it was so beautiful to be with thousands of other people, just uplifted and just invigorated and inspired by this powerful music we were all hearing. That was an experience of joy and upliftment, and we need more of those. But having those experiences, Arndrea, means that we have to actually come out of our homes and be physically together. These experiences are very different online versus when you're physically in the presence of other people. And it's one of the reasons why I think it's especially important for young people that we model how to do that we create opportunities to do that, because I think that we have maybe in prior generations assumed that everybody just develops robust social skills as they get older, because pre sort of digital era, you had to go and just talk to people, find out how to, like, if you make things work with your roommate in college, or if you went to college, or figure out how to talk to somebody in middle school in the lunchroom. Middle school is hard for everybody, myself included. But these days, actually, there's an off-ramp if you feel distress of isolation or social anxiety, and that off-ramp is your phone, right? So, and this is what young people would tell me all the time when I traveled around the country and spoke to high school students and college students, is they would say, yeah, it's when things are stressful, we don't necessarily have to interact with each other. So maybe there's a mixer at orientation, but if we get uncomfortable, we just pull out our phones, right? So I think it's especially important for us to cultivate these skills and these opportunities for in-person interaction. I want to just share one quote with you, which I just came across, which moved me very deeply. It was written by a college student about 13 years ago in 2012, who had, when she was just about to graduate from college, and her essay that she wrote was called "The Opposite of Loneliness." And this is the quote that really stuck with me. Her name is Marina Keegan, and tragically she died 5 days after her graduation in a car accident. She says, quote, "We don't have a word for the opposite of loneliness. It's not quite love. It's not quite community. It's just this feeling that there are people, an abundance of people, who are in this together, who are on your team. When the check is paid and you stay at the table, when it's 4 a.m. and no one goes to bed, that night with the guitar, that night we can't remember, that time we did, we went, we saw, we laughed, we felt." I think about that quote all the time, because what it reminds me of is that this belonging that we all need, that's part of our just basic human requirement to be alive and thrive, that sense of belonging can come through these powerful shared experiences. It can come from knowing that we're in it together, that we're not alone. During the pandemic, in those early days when everybody was staying at home, many of us realized that it meant something to us to be in a coffee shop with other people, even if we weren't there with all of our best friends. It meant something to be in a grocery store and to be passing other people and seeing, there's a fellow parent who's shopping for her child, and I can relate to that. All of these moments of connection, whether it's with a best friend or with somebody in our kids' school or somebody in a coffee shop, they contribute to our sense of belonging. And this is what we need to now intentionally build in our lives and in the world, because it's a foundation on which we build everything else, from our health to our economy to our education. And that's why I think it has to be such a priority at this moment.
I feel like so much of this is about these like individual acts and like and just like small decision points. Like, do I reach out to this friend? Do I invite somebody over for dinner? I have nothing to do this afternoon. Do I spend it with people or do I spend it with myself? And I feel like we all just have to like, it's like a million of these acts, and it's all of us working that muscle of, I will have people over for dinner today. I will go on a walk with a friend instead of by myself. I mean, it's wonderful to have solitude, but it's also, it's choosing to make those, putting yourself out there a little bit and having the discomfort of being with another person who has different thoughts, and how do you navigate that? We had this experience. We started this social committee in our condo building, and there was an event that we were going to do on the roof, and it was raining, so we just had everybody over to our house, and everybody kind of just hung out at our house for hours. And as people were leaving, we had this strange experience where people said, "Thank you for being so brave and having us all over." And it just felt like we've all been living in this building together for years. We pass each other in the hallways. Like I hear your noise upstairs. Like, how is it brave to have people over? But I think we want to work toward a world where that is no longer strange and, oh my goodness, wow, they did that, but something that's just normal.
Because I think it's so easy, to your point, and Vivek, you made this comment, just to reach for our phones, to zone out, to accept things how they are, to let us become more disconnected. Like, even the act of just reaching for our phones, my wife actually, I'm going to say it on air, although she told me to originally say it off air, wanted me to actually thank you for the work that you have done on social media. We got 3 boys. And I am, so now you're nodding your head like, that's why. Because so many of our listeners or viewers are terrified about our kids growing up in this world of unchecked social media and the thing we just accept. And we know it as parents, but the two of you know this as doctors. So I'm so curious to hear from you.
Recently, I told our kids, "Mommy's gonna start using my phone less, and I want you to call me out on it when I'm picking up my phone and being on the phone instead of talking to you." And it's shocking how many times that happens. Why are you on your phone?
I'm impressed that you had to give them permission to check you.
Can I actually say
Because
that?
our daughter, she automatically checks us.
I love the tangibility of that for all of our listeners and viewers. What a great action as parents to not just harp on their kids. Listen, I harp on my kids a bit on this. So to actually tell our kids, you can have permission to call us out. I think it's a powerful suggestion. I love that. Thank you, Alice. Is very silent right now. Do they call him out? Has he given permission also?
I haven't given them permission, but they call me out.
Exactly. Okay. Welcome to our world.
Yep.
It's telling them, don't take my example because I'm not doing a good thing. And that's kind of the reason of doing it, is to say I'm working on this. Don't become like me, because they're young enough that they don't have their own phones. They don't really know what social media is. And so it's really trying to start now of saying, this is not good. Even though you see me doing it.
I think this is really important for as a topic. And I'll tell you, Craig, one of the reasons that I did that advisory on social media and youth mental health was because this was the most common question that parents were asking me when I traveled around the country. They were saying, is social media really okay for my kids? And they were worried that it wasn't. And they were wondering, why aren't we hearing more about it from medicine or public health authorities if indeed there are harms here? What we were seeing in the data is that kids who were spending, on average, 3.5 hours or more per day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. And it turns out the average amount of use per day among kids was 4.8 hours. So it was nearly 5 hours, significantly higher than that 3.5 hour threshold. But even if you go beyond those studies and you look at what are kids telling us themselves, adolescents, about how social media is making them feel, nearly half were saying that social media made them feel worse about their body image. Many were saying that it detracted from their sleep. And also students would tell me all the time when I traveled, because they would bring up social media first, actually, in conversations around mental health. They would most commonly say social media made them feel worse about themselves, as they constantly compared themselves to others. It made them feel worse about their friendships, as they saw people doing things without them, but they couldn't get off it. And they felt worse about themselves. And many of them said that they noticed after those initial years of the pandemic that their friends became glued to their devices in a way that they hadn't even seen before then, that it significantly increased. Because when kids were out of school in those for early months of the pandemic, they had their devices, and that's what kept them going to some extent, or connected. But now we've come out of that, but still the addiction to our devices is still there. So people sometimes have said, is it really accurate or okay to talk about this as an addiction? And if you look at the patterns, and I've actually talked to Nora Volkow, who's the head of the National Institute for Drug Abuse, one of our nation's foremost authorities on addiction, and to others as well, the patterns that you see of behavior in people who have problematic use of social media and their phones is very similar to what you see in people who are addicted to other substances. And anyone who's been a parent, as it sounds like most of us have here, and who have ever given a device to your child early on, or seen them just take the device and then try to take it away from them, you know that there is a reaction that is triggered that is often quite unusual. Our child, the first time that happened with our son, he's incredibly good-natured, very kind, but when he was early on, when he was maybe, a couple of years old, he found a phone and he was looking at it, and we took it away. The screech and anger from him was something we had never experienced before. We're who is this child inside our kid's body? But the key thing to understand here, though, is that is not a fluke. These were designed to maximize how much time we spend on them. The entire business model of social media is based on maximizing your time spent, because that translates to advertising dollars, right? So you've got the best product engineers in the world figuring out how to use cutting edge neuroscience to design the features that will keep you on for longer, clicking more, reading more, scrolling more, right? And so it's one thing to do that to a 40 or 50-year-old adult. It's another thing when a child early in adolescence is at a critical phase of brain development, when they're more susceptible to social suggestion and social cues, where impulse control hasn't developed. And you subject them to that kind of environment, and it's no surprise that we've seen this sort of addictive behavior, and we have so many kids who say they want to reduce how much they use social media, but are having a hard time doing so.
I'm blown away. I think we're all blown away. We're all parents here. And I think many parents are probably listening. But the fact that the pattern of behavior of social media is the same or equivalent, as you just eloquently said, the pattern of behavior of other substances. And that's shocking. And of course, that creates greater disconnection. So if that's the challenge, my question to you, and you've touched upon it, but put your doctor hat on, take out your prescription pad, take out a pen, and what's the prescription of solving disconnection?
Well, since you asked for prescription, it turns out the final document that I issued when I was Surgeon General was actually called a parting prescription to America. It was about what you're getting at, which is there was this deeper question that had been bothering me for years when I was in office, meeting people and talking to them, which was this. The question was, why are so many of the people that I meet struggling with a sense of unhappiness and emptiness? Why do so many of them feel like something is missing in their lives? And I realized that many of the narratives that were told, that it's due to economic challenges, security challenges, these are real, actually. These really contribute to the unhappiness and anxiety and pain that people feel. But even when those needs were met, I was finding there was something else that was missing, that people were still feeling that sense of unhappiness. They were still suffering. And what I came to understand through many conversations and research and data, etc., was that there is a story that we have told ourselves, and young people in particular, a narrative that society has created about what constitutes success. And young people would often say this to me most eloquently and clearly, because when I would travel, I would always ask them the same question: how do you define success? And they would say, well, society is defining for us as money, power, and fame. And if we can achieve those three things, then we will really have made it. People will make documentaries about us or write books about us. It'll be great. It's why I met so many people who were saying that what I would say, what do you focus on right now? They would say, I'm focused on building my brand, right? And there was a small part of me which, died every time like somebody said that, because I think it's emblematic of a broader problem. But when you look at what really leads to fulfillment, it's actually remarkably consistent in research, in life experience, in history, and in scripture across faiths, which is that it's a different triad. The triad of modern day success may be wealth, power, and fame, but the triad of lifelong fulfillment is actually relationships, purpose, and service. It's the people we love, the people we help, and it's how we find purpose in our lives and lifting each other up and being a part of something bigger than ourselves. That's actually how we find fulfillment. The core, though, the key about the triad of fulfillment is it has to be rooted in a core virtue, and that virtue is love. Love in all its manifestations of generosity, kindness, but also hope and courage. Those come from love as well. And in writing this parting prescription, I was deeply inspired by Reverend Martin Luther King, by your father and father-in-law, and his call for the beloved community. Because I saw the beloved community, and Alice and I would spend a lot of time talking about this, because we talk about this in the context of when you become a parent, you start realizing that your child is going to need a lot more than you can provide to live a fulfilling life. They're going to depend on the world around them. And the question for us is, what can we do to help make sure that that world is going to be there for our kids and for all kids, that it's going to be a nurturing world where if they fall down, somebody's going to be there to help them up. If they make a mistake, somebody's not going to judge them in the worst possible way, but give them the benefit of the doubt, and where they will do the same for others. And to me, like, that beloved community is about belonging. It's about making love the ethic and the compass through which we are guided in our lives. It's about building a life rooted in relationships, purpose, and service. We want to also build out this narrative and conversation around how to live a better life, right? Because people want to live a better life. Many people in their gut are saying right now, is this it? Is this all? Like, isn't there something more? There is something more, right? And we can find it together, but only if we talk about it, only if we are open about it, only if we come together and start creating opportunities for ourselves and for our children to engage in a life that's rooted in relationships, in service, and in a sense of purpose. And when you keep in mind the fact that right now, more than half of 18 to 24-year-olds say they have little to no sense of meaning or purpose in their lives, that tells us that we've got some work to do to make the future brighter for current and future generations.
Wow.
And one of the things that the four of us are working on together, you talked about shared joy and shared experiences, and is the project Realize the Dream, which I know that you all both also are participating in. And, we certainly encourage, anyone listening in as well. It's really about how we can come together, stand together, and heal some of this divides that we're talking about through serving. So finding service projects and being involved and building the world that you want to be a part in. So it's something that I know the four of us are very excited and honored to be working on together. And we're so happy that you all are joining us in that endeavor as well. So now, Alice, you were at the White House when the Affordable Care Act was signed. Yay, you. But most importantly, you really helped rally doctors across the country. You really helped to organize to support the act. So as we're looking at a time now when more and more people are in danger of losing their health care under current times, what do you think it will take for this country to finally decide that health care is a right and not a privilege?
I think this actually goes back to the conversation we were just having about feeling connected to one another. I feel like we're in a moment when there are a lot of forces telling us to otherize others, that there are many people who are worth less, who don't deserve food, shelter, they don't deserve healthcare. They don't deserve the basic building blocks of life. And I think that we need to just have a much better understanding that we're all actually very connected. I think there are very, very few of us in the modern world who can survive on their own. We couldn't. we couldn't survive a couple of days on our own. But feeling connected to when we eat a meal, who are the farmers who put those seeds in the ground? Who are the truck drivers who drove that to the grocery store? Who are the people picking your food? Who are all those people? And shouldn't we make sure that they're all taken care of for sort of reasons of just shared humanity and very practical reasons of like, we need all of those people. I think we need to start with that basic understanding that if we all do well, we all do well. And that's what leads to us being able to decide, okay, healthcare should be a right. That it doesn't matter who you are and what choices you've made in your life. If you have strep throat, you ought to be able to go to the doctor and get some antibiotics. If you have appendicitis, you ought to be able to go to the hospital, get your appendix taken out, and not feel like you're going to lose your house and everything you own because of it. I think we just have to see each other as our brothers, as our sisters, in order to make sure that we're all taken care of.
We moved to my wife's family's farm for that very reason, to reconnect with nature, to let our kids run outside. Because I don't think these things that you're describing here happen by accident. We have to put an environment around ourselves and rituals and traditions around ourselves to facilitate connection, to facilitate friendship, to facilitate family rituals. So can we take a peek into your family? Forgive me, but getting a little personal here, what are some of the rituals that you have that as a couple or with your children or in your wider extended family that help anchor you?
I'm like, rituals. There's some like goofy things that we do.
Oh, tell us. That's what we want to hear. Okay, don't tell us the family rituals. Please tell us the goofy things.
Yes.
And Vivek, I just want to say, it was really endearing, just for a moment. You were like such a powerful force of good. Everybody knows you are. And you just took a sip of water with a Hello Kitty cup. Can you put that Hello Kitty cup back up? Because I thought that was so endearing. I wanted to come give you a hug and be like, I love you because you're using a Hello Kitty cup. And my girls will think you're cool now.
I did not think you were actually going to take a sip of that cup on camera. Yeah. Vivek is an amazing storyteller. I mean, of stories like in life generally, but also making up stories for our children. So that's part of our like bedtime when if the kids go to bed on time, which doesn't happen that often, but when they do, we all lie down in bed together, turn off the lights, and Vivek spins these like crazy tales, and they're like favorite characters that we all have, and we get really excited when they show up on the scene. Oh my gosh, so and so is back. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah. One of the traditions we have, which we love, is in the summer, we always try to split the summers between our grandparents, between our kids' grandparents, so our parents. So it's half the time in California, half in Miami. And that, it's interesting because that means that like our kids aren't like, taking classes or in like, summer camps for the whole like duration, with other kids in DC. But for us, we were like, even if they miss those things, like being with family is important. So we want to do that.
In the morning on the way to school, we'll often ask them to say one thing they're grateful for.
That's awesome.
And it's so fun to hear from the kids what that thing is. And same at the end of the night, like, what's your rose, what's your bud, what's your thorn, a nice thing that happened today, what do you look forward to, what was the bad thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes the thorn really surprises you, like, I didn't get that, like, I didn't get to eat that orange. And you're like, that was your biggest bad thing that happened today.
Love that.
It's a fun little insight.
We also, we want them, we know that there's such a big emphasis on science and, and STEM learning, science, technology, engineering, math type stuff. But it's really important to us that our kids are creative, that they feel they have the liberty to just express that and cultivate that side of them. So we just recently started doing this fun thing where we'll give them 3 words and we'll ask them to make up a story with those 3 words, right? So they could be 3, and they're often very unrelated, like caterpillar, like orange, and New Jersey, something like that. And then they'll have to like spin a story with those. And the other thing I actually really love doing with them is, and we do this often when Alice is on a conference call and she needs quiet, so I'll take the kids to another room, and then we'll just play these music videos and then dance together.
Yeah.
And that'll it's just us just like dancing together. And it's fun. And so it's we have all kinds of there's just a lot of goofiness at our house. And I'm probably the goofiest person in the house. That's what the kids say. So
very few people know that one of Vivek's core traits is goofiness.
Well, now the world knows, so thank you.
Vivek, just want to put your parenting hat on. I mean, as former Surgeon General, you've obviously impacted so many parents, but put your dad hat on, and then Alice, if you want to put your mom hat on. We recently helped launch a platform called This Way Up that helps to empower girls and their moms around the issue of mental health. What's the pep talk? What's the words of advice you're going to tell to your own kids?
Keep an eye out for ways that you can help people, even if they're like teeny tiny or like holding a door for somebody who's coming in with some groceries. But to do that, to not only keep an eye out, but to like choose to, should I not? Is it intrusive to hold the door? Just do it. I think making that a part of what you do in the world is I think will be really important for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we would also want to tell them that it's normal to feel ups and downs, that they're not bad or doing something wrong or broken because they feel that, but all of us feel it even if we don't always talk about it. I'd also want them to know it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to share what you're going through. And I think the worst feeling for a parent is to see your child suffering, and even worse to know that they're suffering in silence and alone. And I think being able to help our kids know that it's okay for them to talk to us and then to others about how they're feeling is really important. One of the things I'll just share with you, this is actually a ritual, if you will, that we do with our kids is we also want them to know in a world that's constantly telling them who they should be and why they are not enough. We want our kids to know that they are enough, that their worth is intrinsic, that it's not extrinsic. So, we will often whisper to our children, at the, before they go to bed at night, something to that effect. So I'll often tell my son, as I did last night, that I'll always remind him that just always remember that it doesn't matter what other people think, that what matters is that he believes in himself. And I'll tell him that we believe in him, that we always believe in him, and to remember that he's strong and that he's brave and that he's kind. And that's what we tell our daughter too. So those are the words that we whisper to them before they fall asleep at night.
Do you intentionally choose that time? Because one of the things that I know is that the two most potent times are when we first wake up in the morning, but even more powerful of a seed planting time, if you will, is what thoughts, visions, prayers, what's in your mind right before you go to sleep, because you literally are programming yourself for the next 8+ hours. So do you intentionally choose that time with that knowledge?
So yes, actually, when I was growing up, my mother was a strong believer in the idea that what you are exposed to right before you go to sleep just percolates through your head throughout the night. And so she always used to tell us, like, don't watch scary things on TV, like when we were kids. She would tell us that, or don't read books that are disturbing or whatever. Like, read something that's going to calm you, center you, make you feel peaceful. And so thankfully, like, our kids aren't on devices, so they're not, looking at their devices right before they go to bed. So that's good. But we wanted to fill their head with something positive. So we always we have a prayer ritual. We always do prayers together, before they go to sleep. And then once the lights are out and the sheets are over them, this is what we'll whisper into their ears, the reminder for them to believe in themselves. And we tell them that they're kind, they're brave, and they're strong.
Well, we've talked a lot about loneliness and disconnection. I'm very curious, because if any of our listeners are experiencing that, or their children, what are things that any of us that are feeling lonely or loneliness, what can we do to overcome that? What are some suggestions?
The first thing I would say to anyone who's experiencing loneliness is it's important to know that you are not broken. This is a common experience a lot of us have. It's our body's way of telling us that something we need that's essential for survival, in this case social connection, is missing. And it's just like hunger or thirst in that way. I think what's also important is to recognize that the path toward connection actually starts with simple and small steps, that we don't have to overhaul our entire life or uproot ourselves, quit our job, move to a different city in order to build connection. And here are a few simple things that I would offer. One is, if we can start by just taking 5 minutes a day to reach out to someone we care about. That could be a friend, just to check in and say, hey, I was thinking about you, wanted to know how you're doing. It could be to a family member. But those 5 minutes make a difference. The second thing we can do is we can make sure that when we're with other people, whether it's talking on the phone or visiting with them in person, that we're fully present, that we're not on our devices all the time, because 5 minutes of uninterrupted, focused conversation with somebody is often more powerful than a half hour of distracted conversation. But the last thing that we can do is find one small thing each day that we can do to help someone. It could be something very simple, like we see somebody in the grocery store who's spilled their groceries on the ground, and we lean over to help pick them up. Or we see somebody who's lost on the street, or a coworker who's having a hard time at school, or a classmate who looks like they're struggling, and we just pause and say, hey, wanted to check on you. Are you doing okay? These small moments of service are really important, not just for the other person, but for us as a person rendering the service, because service turns out to be one of the most powerful antidotes to loneliness. It connects us to somebody, but reminds us that we have value to give to the world. And that's so important, because one of the corrosive effects of loneliness over time is it can erode our self-esteem. It can make us feel that the reason we're lonely is because we're not likable, that something is wrong with us fundamentally. But moments of service remind us that that's in fact not the case. So these small things, 5 minutes a day to reach out to someone we care about, being present when we're with other people and off our devices, and doing one small thing to help someone each day, these can help us build a stronger and stronger sense of connection.
I love the prescription that you have given for all of us and our listeners. I love the fact that you have dedicated yourselves to showing up. You may not do house calls in the traditional sense, but you've been in our lives, you've been in the lives of Americans, and for speaking about service, purpose, connection, for talking about the goofy family rituals that you so kindly and shared with us today that I loved, for being so open with us in such a beautiful and moving conversation on behalf of all of us, but on behalf of so many whose lives you've touched. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. New episodes drop every Wednesday with bonus content every Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a moment.